Hi there. I'm home. Hello. Well, this is a video that I'm making for my son, Austin Muldoon. He asked me to tell him my life story. So this is how I'm doing it on video. I'm not writing it down. I don't know what you expected, pal, but this is the easiest way for me. We'll get right to it right after this. Hi, pal. Different setting this time as it was when it first started. I made one video already, and when I went back and looked at it, it was 47 minutes long, and I hadn't gotten past the Navy. And so I sat down and I started another video, and it got pretty long, and I still hadn't gotten to the Navy. It was 38 minutes, so I'm trying a third time here. What I'm trying to do now is to decide what to include, because 70 years, some details are going to have to be left out. My father and mother, Austin Robert Muldoon, born in New York in 1925. My mother, Muriel Ann Camellia, born in Miami in 1928. My father's parents are Austin Muldoon and Delia Walsh. My mother's parents are Jack and Josephine Camellia, like the flower. My father's grandparents were born in Ireland. My mother's parents were born in America. I really don't know where. My mother was born in Miami, so they were living in Miami in 1928. I was born in Bronx, Lebanon Hospital, April 13, 1950. However, my parents, and I guess myself, lived in Manhattan at that time. I lived in Manhattan for the first 6 months of my life. Then I moved to the Bronx, and my parents moved to the Bronx. They moved into the apartment that my grandparents were living in at that time. They lived in the Bronx then. I don't know how old my mother was when she moved from Miami to the Bronx, but I know she went to the same grammar school that I went to. I don't know what year she started, like first grade or not. She had some of the same teachers that my sister had at St. Nicholas of Tollentine Grammar School. My father didn't go to Tollentine. I'm not quite sure where he went. I'm guessing my father had an apartment in Manhattan, and my mother was probably living with her parents in the Bronx when they got married, so my mother probably moved in with my father. Probably my grandparents moved out of that apartment and went to Miami, because that's where they were living when I was growing up. That's probably what happened. And when they moved out, my parents and I moved into the apartment that they were living in on Grand Avenue, Fordham Road. So I lived in the same apartment growing up that my mother had lived in when she was growing up on Grand Avenue. Anyway, I was born in the Bronx on April 13th, 1950. I don't know what time of day it was, but I do know it was snowing, which is unusual. Also, my father was on duty at the time. He was a New York City policeman. He was a patrolman, and he was in the 2-4. 2-4 is the precinct, 24th precinct. The cops call it 2-4, which was in Harlem. He was sitting in a cop car outside the hospital when I was being born. So he was outside of his precinct by a long shot. So I know that. Anything else? I was a model when I was a baby. I don't remember it, but I had pictures like in the Sears catalog and stuff like that. I've seen some of the prints that were made out of me smiling and things like that. That didn't last too long. My mother played the xylophone. She was very musical, and she was very, very good at the xylophone. She was taught by a very famous xylophone player. Anyway, he taught her how to play until he couldn't teach her anymore, and then he sent her to his instructor. He was like the Eric Clapton of xylophones. Of course, they weren't only one person was famous here. My dad had no musical interest, didn't play anything. He was a tough guy. He didn't mind getting into a fight, played football when he was a kid and older. He had two older brothers and a younger brother. His oldest brother was John, and then there was Billy, and my father, and then Tommy, the younger brother. Nana didn't like the name Austin, and so it was like after the third son that finally they named him Austin. So my father was called Junie, Junie, and I guess other people called him Junie too. I've heard my uncle refer to my father. When Uncle Billy was talking to Nana, go, yeah, I'm over here. Junie's with me, and like everybody that lived in my neighborhood was Irish, and they were all Catholic. So almost all the kids that lived in my neighborhood went to Tollentine. There were some kids that weren't Catholic, and they went to the local public school, but they still hung around. But almost everybody went to Tollentine, and Tollentine was the center of the parish, and a lot of our social life was connected to Tollentine. There was the Pop Warner football team, which was not connected to the school, but everybody in the Pop Warner football teams, all the team, went to Tollentine. The same thing with the Little League team I was on. It wasn't connected to the school, but everybody went to the school. The coaches for the football team and the coaches for the baseball team were parents of the players. My father coached the Tigers on the Little League team. I was on the Tigers as a minor league, and then I went to another team in the majors, but I was still a kid. He was also part of the training on the football team I was on. No, he wasn't a coach on the football team, but the coach of the football team was a cop and he was a friend of my father, so it was all connected, all very connected. I was also on a swimming team. My father was a coach on the swimming team. I was a good swimmer. I swam better than anybody, any of my friends. I was much better swimmer than any of my friends, but I was the slowest swimmer on the swimming team. So it does depend on how good I was. I was able to swim but not compete. But it gave me a chance to swim when nobody else was able to swim in the Bronx during the winter indoors. We used to go to the swimming team that we belonged to. We had a pool, had an Olympic pool after college. New York University had their campus not so far from where I lived. Later on became Bronx Community College, where I went to school. So, anyway, where am I going? So I went to Tollentine Grammar School for 8 years. We had to wear a shirt and tie every day. Uniform, white shirt, blue tie, blue pants, SNT written on the tie, St. Nicholas of Tollentine. And they would teach us catechism. And very early when I was young, reading the catechism, I didn't believe everything they were telling me. Some of the stuff just I didn't believe it. I didn't believe Adam and Eve. I didn't believe Christ died for our sins. None of this stuff made sense. And they would tell us that, and if you don't believe, just have faith. And what is faith? Faith is when you pretend you believe or something like that. And we went to 9 o'clock Mass every Sunday. All the students had to go to 9 o'clock Mass every Sunday. If you didn't go, you got in trouble, unless you had a note from your parents. And parents, please excuse Brian, we went away for the weekend, whatever the hell it was. I did all those things because I had to. There was no choice in the matter. When I turned 18 and I didn't have to go to church anymore, I didn't go. I haven't never been since. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, so we lived on Grand Avenue. Grand Avenue was a narrow one-way street, cars parked on both sides, and a narrow street down the middle, and apartment houses all up and down Grand Avenue. And a lot of kids lived in these apartment houses, and we would all come out and we would play together, different games, hang out, depending on your age and stuff like that. For example, we played Scully. Some neighborhoods it was called Skelly, and other neighborhoods it was called Skelsies. What it was is you take a chalkboard and you draw a big line in the street, a square in the street, much like you would take chalk and make a hopscotch. But anyway, and it was like a board game, but it was on the street, and you play with bottle caps. Let me see. Okay, this is the street, and you put the bottle cap on it, and you hit it with your thumb, and you move it within this big box that you drew, the Scully box, and you got different points, and you had to go there and there. not important what it was. It's just things that we did, played in the street. We also played stickball. Most of the games that we played with the ball involved a pink ball that was made by the Spalding Company. It had Spalding written on the side there. But we in the Bronx called them Spaldings. It was the accent. We called them Spaldings. And we'd use this to play stickball. Stickball was a lot like baseball, except you didn't have a baseball bat. You used a broom handle, a broomstick, or a mop handle, and there was no pitcher or catcher. So you throw the ball up in the air and you hit it like that, or you'd bounce it and hit it like that. The bases were agreed to beforehand. It would be like the rear view mirror on that Chevy was first base. The manhole covered down in the corner was second base, blah, blah, blah. And so they would play on the sidewalks in the streets, and you'd try to hit the ball and run the bases, just like baseball. We also played ball against the side of the building, smacking the ball against the building somehow. Different ways of doing that for different games. We played curb ball in the street where you throw the ball against the curb and it would bounce and kind of do this. What else we play? Then we play Ring Alivio. It didn't involve any game pieces, but it was two teams against each other, 10, 15 guys on the team. And let's see, we'd have a base and it would start there, and one team would run out and hide, and we would count to 100, 200, and then we would go out looking for them. We had a designated boundary how far you could go. You know, you can go 3 blocks out, you go to Jerome Avenue, you go on this side of the Univer. And I guess it was about 4 city blocks. We had to come up with that because before we come up with that, you just go out and hop on the subway and go down to Yankee Stadium. They're never going to find you. Anyway, games like that. Lots of games in the streets. We made scooters. You know what scooters are? You hold on and you stand on one foot and then you push it with the other foot. But we made them ourselves with wood, 2x4, and a box, a wooden crate box, like a milk box or something like that. It was made of wood hard. And you just connect it to the front, and that would be the front of the scooter. Skates. We used to roller skating in the streets. These roller skates would attach to your shoes. And then you'd roller skate, they were all made of metal, and they had clamps that covered it. So you take one skate and you could take it apart, because they were adjustable to fit your foot. You take it apart and you put the back wheels in the back of the wood, one in the front, so those are your wheels, and this was your scooter. You could paint it different colors and things like that. That's what some of the that's what it's like growing up in the Bronx, in New York City, really. Let's see, there were real baseball fields around, so we played in the Little League on real baseball fields, and we played football and on real football fields throughout the place. But Tollentine didn't have football or baseball. It did have basketball, though. We had basketball courts in the gymnasium, but I didn't play basketball. I was very small growing up, too, very, very small. My friend Mike used to say I was the size of a peanut. And I was very young looking, even for my age. I was small, short, skinny, and young looking. And I'll give you an example. When I went into high school, I was 4'9". When I went into the Navy, I was the same height I am now, and I weighed 119 pounds. So that gives you an idea. So I was kind of at the mercy of the bullies in the street and stuff like that. And anybody could pick on me, and really wasn't much I could do about it except try to run. But I did have some friends that acted like bodyguards. Mike Collins was exceptionally tall for his age, and he was about a month younger than me. And I was exceptionally small. So he spent a lot of time defending me and keeping the bullies away from me. Thank God for that. But it was still scary. You know, anybody could pick on me. You never knew when it was going to come and stuff like that. So I didn't really like it on the street because there was always that fear. School, grammar school, I didn't do very well grade-wise. I didn't study. I don't know why I didn't study. I refused to study. When I did study, I did very well, but I almost never studied. Let's see, grammar school. The nuns in the grammar school were, they were able to hit us. They were allowed to hit us, you know. There was no problem with them hitting us with a ruler or with a pointer. You know, he'll hold your fingers out and they that fucking fingers with the pointer. And the ruler you can get across your ass. One nun used to put a ring of keys on her finger. on her fingers, and had the keys on the inside, and she called them her loving cups. And she would smack you in the side of the face with this loving cup. Big smile on her face. Sadistic, really. So it was scary at school, too. And if the nuns hit you and do things like that, you didn't tell your parents because your parents would punish you for getting in trouble. There was no thing there. At home, I was always scared because my father was pretty strict, and he was into physical, spare the rod, spoil the child kind of a thing there. And I guess that's the way he was raised. So I would get hit. I would also get into trouble for things that I didn't know. Quick example, I was eating string beans. And it was sitting at the dinner table, and you stick your fork in the green beans, and they kind of just stick to the fork. And so I just kind of was playing, and I stuck another one up there, and another, until I got all the string beans, so the fork was full of all the string beans. I could see how they kept pushing each other up, kind of a science investigation and curiosity, and put them all in my mouth. All of a sudden, he's yelling at me, "Jesus Christ, I can't believe you stuck that in your mouth. What the hell's wrong with you people?" And I got yelled at, and I got in trouble. That's how I found out that that things were wrong. I would get in trouble and then learn, oh, you don't do that. So the way you do it is you tell your son, don't ever put those string beans on the string because that's against the rules. Or if you see you doing it and you put it in your mouth, you say, oh, I don't want to see you do that again. That's not for whatever reason. You don't punish the kid for having done something wrong when you didn't know it was wrong. So there was always that fear of getting yelled at for and not know why. And I gave him plenty of reasons to yell at me too, of course, there's a lot of that. So I was scary everywhere. I was always scared all the time. I was very nervous. I bit my nails down to nothing. And I wasn't really fond of the Bronx. I wasn't fond of my childhood. None of it, hardly any good memories. 8th grade in grammar school, I hope I'm not skipping over things. 8th grade in grammar school, you have to put in for what high school you want to attend. I got sent to Cardinal Farley Military Academy. This was kind of a surprise to me. I got sent away to a military school. And I just assumed that it was punishment for being such a bad kid that was getting in trouble, or because they thought the military would give me some self-discipline. They said it was because it was a very good education, which it was, but anyway, Cardinal Farley Military Academy is a boarding school, it's a prep school, and it's terribly expensive. It was $4,000 a year, and at that time, a brand new Chevrolet Impala was $3,000 a year. So imagine in today's terms what the expensive Chevrolet is, and then add 25% to the cost, and that's how much you would be spending on military school. My father was a cop. My mother didn't work, and he had 4 kids. So how did a cop afford military school? I never figured that one out. Maybe he was making a little bit more money than he should have been making. I don't know. So Cardinal Farley, that was rough too because it was a military school. We had inspections every morning, and we had to march, and we had to go to school, and all the students and the faculty outranked me. I was a freshman of plebes. And so, the sophomores could make you clean up empty those ashtrays out, take these chairs. So everybody outranked me. And see what else I was going to say about that. I don't know. The school was originally donated to the Catholic Church. It was the Roosevelt estate. It was 1,000 acres, and it set up on top of a hill and overlooked the Hudson River. It was 90 miles north of New York in a city called Rhinecliff-on-Hudson, and the train ran between New York and Rhinecliff along the Hudson Valley. Beautiful ride, Catskill Mountains. Also went right through the middle of Sing Sing, which is a prison. I found that fascinating. Let's see what else. So I didn't get home every week. I spent a lot of weekends at the school. I was homesick and things like that. Let's see, and everybody outranked me, and didn't really like it. And I missed my friends and all that stuff. So I went there, and I went back my sophomore year. But after my sophomore year, they took me out of the school, and I didn't request it. I didn't know what was going to happen. All of a sudden, they said, "You're not going back to Farley. You're going to go to All Hallows." All Hallows was another Catholic school a good school, but it didn't have a grammar school. It was just high school, and it was run by the same people that ran Farley. I think it was the Christian Brothers of Ireland ran the school, and they also had schools in New York City. They had All Hallows and Power Memorial and Rice, and they were all connected by the Christian Brothers of Ireland. So when the time came for the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which we always march in every year because we were a big military school, the other schools would march near us. And Lou Alcindor went to one of the other schools. He was a student, I think, of Power Memorial. I think Lou Alcindor played basketball. He's tall. He became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So I'd seen him when he was in high school. I was in high school. I saw him in the store. Had to wear a shirt and tie to All Hallows. And at the end of my first junior year at All Hallows, they kicked me out because of my academic record, and they recommended that I get left back. So I went over to Tollentine because I couldn't tell my parents this. I went over to Tollentine and I applied to get into Tollentine. They took me right away, put me right into my senior year. I didn't get left back. So when I got around to telling my father that I got kicked out of All Hallows, I was able to tell him that I haven't enlisted in Tollentine and I'm a senior. And then 3 months later, Tollentine kicked me out. That was just because of my behavior. And so I had to go to public school. So I went to DeWitt Clinton in my senior year. I remember I got there in the morning, and it was just huge, and it just seemed like chaos. And by the time lunch rolled around, I ran into a guy that I knew from Grand Avenue. He was going to Clinton. And let's go to lunch, and then after lunch, let's not go back. And I thought, yeah, okay, because I hadn't really been to school yet, so they wouldn't notice that I wasn't there the first day. Well, I never went back to school. That was it. That was the last time I went to high school. And so I started leaving the house in the morning and just not going anywhere, kind of hanging around with other dropouts that I had found, and things were going downhill pretty fast. I was able to get a job in a hotel, the Hotel Pennsylvania. I drove an elevator. Elevators were being automated, so it was a dead-end job right from the beginning, but I had to wear a little uniform. I drove the elevator. Things weren't going too good. My father and I were on the outs, so we just weren't even talking to each other, and I stopped going home. I would sleep at the hotel or stay with people, and it wasn't very good. And so my mother and her friend came to the rescue, and they got me into the Navy because, like I was saying, I was 18, and the draft was going to come and get me, and they were going to probably send me to Vietnam into the jungle. So I figured the Navy would keep me out of the jungle. Of course, it was twice as long as 4 years as opposed to 2, but I would learn a trade. And I would have a bed to sleep in at night, and I would get hot meals all day long. And so I went to the Navy. I went to boot camp. And boot camp turned out to be wonderful for me because I was able to reinvent myself. Nobody knew me. They didn't know my path. They didn't know what I was like as a kid or anything like that. And nobody knew each other either. So we all went to boot camp, and for everybody in boot camp, it was the first time they had been away from home, and it was everything was different. There were inspections, and they were marching and stuff. This is what I did at Cardinal Farley. See, I had already been away from home, and I had already learned how to march, and I had already done these inspection things. So this was a piece of cake for me. This was real easy. I knew it. And so I was able to reinvent myself, and I became like one of the cool guys because that's what I decided I wanted to be. And it's been like that ever since. So my life started in the Navy. The life before that was the life that I had no choice on. My life was in the Navy. Pretty soon I had gotten to be a petty officer. I got recommended for the promotion. I took a test and I passed it, and I got my petty officer badge on my arm. I'm very, very proud of that. Very proud of my petty officer badge. It was the first accomplishment of my life, my first accomplishment of my adult life, that I had achieved the rank of petty officer. I was always so proud of that. I always had that on my sleeve, and I'd walk around and look at my sleeve, I'm a petty officer. Now, that's where I put my tattoo, in the same spot there. Anyway, when I left Farley, I joined, I lived back at home again, and we made a band. I played bass, guitar in the band, and I was the lead singer, and I pretty much put the band together. And there was a guy named Greg. He played the piano real well, so he became the organ player. Doug had a set of drums, so he was a drummer. Doug had a brother named Petey, and he didn't know how to play the guitar, but he wanted to play, so he made him the lead guitarist. And then another guy named Pete as a rhythm guitar. Pete's parents bought a house on the other side of the Bronx, and it had a basement, and we could practice in the basement. So Pete became part of the band there, and we go over to his house and practice. I picked the bass because I figured it was probably the easiest instrument to play because it only had 4 strings. I never really took any lessons on any instrument I play. I would listen to a tune, and then I would figure out how to play it on the bass, and then I would memorize it, and that's how I play instruments. Same with the piano. I hear it and I figure it out. I don't know how to play other than that. So I played the bass and I did the lead singing because I was a good singer. I was in the choir. I knew I could sing well. And that was a lot of fun. We used to play. We never got paid for any of the gigs that we did, but we played like at Luther League, which was like it was a church, Lutheran church that had the basement, and it was kind of, kids could hang around there. It was kind of watched and was authorized. They would have Kool-Aid and candy, and you can play different games. And they had a stage, and sometimes you played at the on the stage and did that. That was, I had a Zimgar guitar. I bought that. Was the first thing. It was just cheap bass guitar, Zimgar, Zimgar. And my mother bought me an amplifier. It was an Ampeg B15. That was a nice amp. It was a local band. They were real popular as a local band that played in the local bars and high school dances and stuff like that. And the bass player sold me his guitar when he bought a new one, and so that's where I got a Mosrite. A Mosrite, very nice guitar, not well known, but very nice. I think the B-52s plays Mosrites, and the Ventures, which was an instrumental band, played exclusively Mosrite. They said so in the back of the album. So I had that big, beautiful Mosrite. That was a lot of fun. That was just a point of my life. Have I skipped anything? What else was there going on? It must have been something else. I had 3 sisters, Kathy, Jackie, and Terry. Terry Ann was born severely retarded. And they never really told us that she was severely retarded. She was just a slow learner. I didn't notice that she looked different from everybody else. She looked retarded. She and I got along real well. I used to feed her when it was time for her to feed. But she would only eat by the front door, so it was time when I'd get her bowl, and she would run to the front door and sit down in front of me, and I would feed her. And the only thing she said was "Heike." Nothing else she ever said in her life. It was "Heike." Never learned how to speak. Sometimes we'd be sitting in the living room watching television, and she would just get up off the couch and smash her head into the television. This became something that she always did, so she wore a helmet. She wouldn't do that. And they sent her off to Willowbrook Hospital in Staten Island, Willowbrook. And they were going to teach her how to talk. This is what they're telling us we're going to teach. So we would go visit her on the weekends, which meant that we would drive down Manhattan, go past the ocean liners, the United States, the France, Queen Elizabeth, Normandy, really real ocean liners. And then we go down and take the Staten Island ferry across over to Staten Island and go to this tremendous hospital complex, Willowbrook. And while we were in the waiting room, I happened to look at some pamphlets, and it started talking about retarded children. And my mother covered it up real quick. So they just told us that they were going to teach her how to speak. But that wasn't what they did. They just put her in there. They just put her in there for the rest of her life. And it wasn't so long after a while that we stopped visiting her. Just kind of left her. I know my mother never really went to visit her anymore, and I had no more contact with her, and I felt guilty that she had to go away because I tried to teach her how to talk, but she didn't learn, and I felt really like a failure, I was young. And as I realized I was getting older, that my mother pretty much just abandoned her. I thought, Jesus Christ, that could have been me. I could have been born retarded, and she would have just left me in Willowbrook High School Hospital. So that was difficult for me to deal with. And Terry Ann finally died. I guess she was in her 30s, which is a long time for somebody severely retarded like that. She always wore a helmet. When we did go to visit her, she didn't know who we were. It was tough for me. And I always held it against my mother that she just abandoned one of her children because I was one of her children. So anyway, that's Terry Ann. I didn't think I was going to cover that. All right, so what else is going on? Nana. Nana was my father's mother. Nana was always an old lady when I was growing up. And I recently looked at a picture of me, my father, and Nana standing on the boardwalk at Rockaway Beach. My father's got a tie and he's older than me. I was a baby, probably before Kathy was born, and Nana looks like an old lady. Nana died when she was in the late 90s, and she always lived in the same apartment. It was in Manhattan, but it wasn't that far from where I lived in the Bronx. I could walk it. It'd take a while to get there, but I could walk it. You take the number 19 bus, 15 cents, and I would be there in 10, 15 minutes. Often I would just show up, just go over there just to see her for no reason at all. But Nana was kind of mean or judgmental or something, strict. And everybody was afraid of Nana. Everybody avoided Nana. You know, my aunts that were married to her sons, oh Nana, oh God, and then all my cousins, oh Nana. But I liked Nana, and Nana liked me a lot. Nana and I, we got along really well, and I would go visit. Now I was also the oldest grandchild, so I was her first grandchild. But you know, I was special to her, and she was special because she was just genuinely loving. And so yeah, so Nana and I were close, but nobody else got along with her so well. So when I took you to see Nana, I made a point of making sure that Nana met you. And so when you met Nana, you were 4. Nana was in her 90s at the time. She looked older. You walked up, looked at her, went, like you had just seen a monster, you know, because you're old. And Nana and I kind of laughed about it a little bit there. But Nana loved you immediately because you were my son, and she loved you. And you felt that pretty quickly as you calmed down and you relaxed, and you had a lot of fun with Nana. You got along. But the initial Nana, she was like, "This is your son," and you were there with Kathy was there with her kids too. So well, you weren't the only kid there, and a lot of running around and playing and stuff like that there. But I was glad Nana met you. I was glad that. And Nana and I had something in common. Now we both had sons named Austin Muldoon, you know. Yeah, so I like Nana. Anyway, I'm glad that you and her got to meet each other. Well, at least she got to meet you. See what else, Nana? So I love Nana. Hi, pal. Well, I've discovered it's nearly impossible to make the video any shorter than it's been made already. I go faster. I leave out some information, but still it takes up a lot of time. So I'm just going to have to resign myself that this is going to be longer than I want it to be. So I don't know if I'll be able to upload it onto YouTube or anything like that. I'll just have to show it to you when you're here, or I'll bring the iPad to you. Then we'll figure it out. Eventually, you're going to wind up owning the iPad, so you'll have this. But it is intended for you to watch by yourself. You can share it once you see it, but this is what I intend. So anyway, let's pick up the Navy. Well, it looks like I'm gonna have to interrupt this video because I left some stuff out. It's your birthday's in the afternoon, and this should be done. It's all been done except for this part here. My time in the Navy. Joined the Navy September 1968, went to boot camp, which I covered already. And after boot camp, I went to A school. A school is the designation of a type of school. It's A school, B school, C school. I went to EMA school. EM is electrician's mate. Okay, so that figures out too. After I got out of A school, which was also at Great Lakes in Illinois, North Chicago, which is not near Chicago, but North Chicago, Illinois, where the Great Lakes Navy base is. There's a boot camp there, and then there's the hospital side, and it has schools there also, not just electricians, enginemen, different things like that. I lived at Snipes Castle, that's what they called it, and I went to school for quite a while, I guess about 8, 9 months, something like that. Anyway, then I went to the fleet. Now I went to USS Sandoval. This is what I'm trying to cover here. The ships that I was on. USS Sandoval, LPA 194. It was a troop transport ship. It was old. It was from World War II. It was in battles in Japan. It had also been hit by a kamikaze plane. Destroyed the bridge, killed a bunch of people. Anyway, when I was on 68, we were carrying Marines. That's troop transport. They took to carry Marines of the amphibious Navy. It also had a hospital on the ship. When the ship returned from its 6-month cruise in the Mediterranean Sea, we returned to our home base, Little Creek, Virginia. Little Creek, Virginia is in Virginia Beach, and there are other Navy bases real close by. Norfolk is, of course, there. There's a Naval Air Station there. There's a whole bunch of Navy bases right next to each other. And I was at Little Creek, which is the amphibious Navy, right? Gator Navy. It was also called Gator Navy. First ship, USS Sandoval, LPA 194. When that went out of commission, well, actually, when it was going out of commission, you couldn't live on the ship anymore. Decommissioning the ship, what you do is you take off anything that's valuable, or you preserve things, put lots of grease on top of motors, remove all the galley equipment, so there was no kitchen, removed all the racks, those are beds, so there was no place to sleep, and no heat, so it was during the winter, so we slept in barracks during that time. And once the ship went out of commission, I got transferred to the USS York County, LST 1175. LST, landing ship tank. It's the type of ship, it's flat bottom, so it really bounces around in the water, even in calm seas, because it's a flat bottom ship. It's flat bottom because it has to pull up on the beach. It has to get close to the beach to open up the bow doors so that the tanks and the trucks can drive off into battle. You may remember this from D-Day. You may have seen a lot of that in that movie. A new ship went into commission, USS Portland, LSD-37, brand new ship that had just been built, and they had to put the crew on it. So they took half the crew out of boot camp and out of schools, and the other half of the crew had to be experienced fleet sailors. So they went around to different ships and as an electrician. Since I was the new guy on the USS York County, they sent me to the new ship. I hadn't been there very long, a few months, so I was on the Portland for a while. What happened? Portland. I was going to marry a girl named Terry. I had met I left a lot out. I met Terry in a bar in Manhattan. It turns out Terry went to Tolentine, was a year behind me in school, knew my sister, lived a block away from where I grew up, but I didn't know her. So Terry and I dated for a while, and then we got married. Okay, but before we got married, we had made wedding plans, the hall, the church, the caterers, flowers, photographer, things like that, while I was on the Portland. Well, the Portland was scheduled to go for a cruise at the same time I was supposed to get married. So we were going to deal with that. Okay, so we'll just change the plans and stuff like that. However, my mother got involved. Unknown to me, she got involved. My mother was a politician. And captain called me up to his quarters. I had never met the captain. He was a mean little guy. And I knocked on his door, and he said, and I went in, stood at attention, saluted, and he said to me, Muldoon, to say that I am disappointed, to say that I am disgusted would be the understatement of the world. Your mother got in Congress invented all this. Muldoon, you are dismissed. You will be transferred from the ship as quickly as I can do it. You are dismissed. And I turned around, I didn't say a word. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And I got transferred off that ship real quick, and I wound up on USS Suffolk County, LST 1173, which took me to the Med. So I went to A school, and I was on 4 different ships in 4 years. I was reading something on Facebook recently about a guy who was in the Navy for 20 years, mentioned that he had been on 5 different ships. In 20 years, he was on 5 ships. In 4 years, I was on 4 ships, and I also went to A school. That's a very unique Navy experience. So let me mention Terry, because I don't think she's in there. That was my first wife. You know my second wife. She was my mother, your mother. Terry and I got married before the York County, before the Suffolk County went to the Med. We got married at Tollentine Church, just like my parents did. And we had a small reception at a restaurant, local restaurant. It was just a wedding party, a couple of friends. Mike Collins was my best man. You met Mike Collins in Colorado. What else? Okay. So we got an apartment down in Virginia. Now, part of the reason why I got married was because you lived on the ship, and the ship was in port. You worked at 8, and then at the end of the day, at knockoff, you stayed on the ship. Unless you went out to the bar or something like that, but that's pretty much where you stayed. But the guys that were married had apartments off base, and they got a little bit more money. And so I thought this is a good idea. I shouldn't have gotten married, you know. She wasn't the girl of my dream, and I just was young. I got married, I was 21, she was 19. But she turned 7 days later? 7 days later, she was almost 19, not 20. Really nice girl. Let's see what happened. Oh yeah, so while my ship was overseas, after we got married, so after we got married, we went down to the Plaza Hotel. We got a suite down there. We spent the night afternoon at the Plaza, and then I went overseas later on. Pretty soon after that, Christmas time, we pulled into Monte Carlo, right into the yacht club, right into the yacht base, because we was kind of moving a big ship, and they had this Dependence flight. Now what they did was around Christmas. The plane that was going to take these guys back stateside flew out of the United States. They brought Dependence with them. My wife was one of the Dependents, so she got on a flight and she flew to Monte Carlo, and then other people. So she was in Monte Carlo with me for 10 days, I think, 10 days. And we rented a car, we drove all over the place, and we went up to Italy, and so that was my honeymoon. Probably more detailed than that. But I got out of the Navy in 1972, and I got a job with Remington Rand. That was in Manhattan on 6th Avenue, or Avenue of the Americas, as non-New Yorkers call it. It sat between like WABC television and the Radio City Music Hall was on the other side of the street. I was right there in Midtown, right amongst all the other places that are in Midtown. Remington Rand had filing machines in different offices. They just moved shelves around that the files were on by pushing buttons. I had to travel on the subways to get to the different customers. I did that for several months. A friend of mine from the Navy told me that Western Union was hiring up in Mahwah, New Jersey, M-A-H-W-A-H, Mahwah, New Jersey, and they were interested in me, somebody with my talents, because I was an electrician in the Navy. So I got the job in Mahwah. I worked as a dispatcher for a little while, and then I moved over to the shop where I actually worked on the equipment that we were selling and servicing. After I worked in the shop for a while, got another promotion and went out to the field. And this meant I drove around now from customer to customer, just like I did with the Remington Rand, but this time I had a vehicle to drive. When they sent me out to the field, I was assigned to E.F. Hutton. That's a brokerage firm on Wall Street. I worked on Wall Street for a while. E.F. Hutton had several commercials that always wound up the same. For example, there would be a lot of people in the restaurant. People are all talking to each other, and you kind of zoom in on 2 people that are talking, and one person says, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton. And all of a sudden the restaurant gets real quiet and everybody turns and looks at the person that's speaking. And the narrator says, when E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen. So that's how the commercial always went. They were a very large customer of ours, so they got 2 technicians assigned to the building and to all the surrounding areas where they also had machines. I remember you didn't have computers and ways of texting or communicating with each other, so we had like an in-house texting ability. They can text to each other. So we went on the floor of the New York Exchange. Now, I don't know how it is now, but it used to be very crowded and very chaotic. You can see movies or newspapers. You can see from news clippings or videos, people walking around holding up now pieces of paper, yelling and screaming. They were buying and selling stock. I had to walk amongst these people with the equipment. I wasn't in there when it was closed. It was always open when I went in there. Also worked on the New York Exchange, the Cocoa Exchange, at the Silver Exchange. They were in different buildings. The Silver Exchange, for example, was at the bottom of the World Trade Center. And I would drive from E.F. Hutton to the World Trade Center, which is only about 4 blocks, 3 blocks, but the equipment I had was heavy. So I would drive. When I got there, there was indoor parking, pulled up in my white van with no markings, and had to stop at the gate, and the guy would say yes, and I would say Western Union. And he'd go right ahead through, open up the gate and let me right through. I never checked ID or anything. It was all real simple. Years later, there was a bombing in the bottom of the World Trade Center, just before it collapsed. And when I read that news, I knew how they did it. I knew how easy it would be to get in there and set off a bomb in the car, which is what happened. Anyway, I worked there for a while, and I got real tired of New York City winters and the subway and the crowds. And so I put in for a transfer to Miami. And I got that, and that's when I lived in South Florida. I worked for Western Union for a while. I was working for Western Union where you were born, too. So in South Florida, I got sober in 1982. That's when I stopped drinking. I moved to South Florida in 1979, and I got sober in 82. A couple of years after I was sober, I bought a house. And when I bought that house, living there alone, it became a very strong desire, or I don't know how to put the word, that I wanted children. I had never really, I always wanted children. I always expected to have children, but I never put any effort into doing it. I was still drinking and having a good time, and there was always time for that. My first marriage ended, so and I expected that to last a while, but it didn't, and it lasted about 7 years we were together, but we didn't have children. She would have loved to have been the mother of my child. Anyway, she died when she was in her 40s. So bought the house, and I decided I wanted children. So when I was looking, usually when you're on the market for dating, when you're single, you're looking for some kind of a person to date and maybe have a long-term relationship with. But when you want to have children, you're looking at a person who would be a good mother. And so that's what I did, and I discovered your mother. And she moved in, her and Taryn moved in with me. Her and Taryn. Okay, she was pregnant when I met her. And we kept in touch because she didn't live near me. She was on vacation when we met in South Florida. She was staying with her cousin, Lori. And they lived not so far from me, but they were driving her to the meeting, and rather than ask them to drive her to the meeting, drive her home and all that stuff, she asked me if I would drive her to meetings, which is what you do in AA. You help people get to and from meetings. I had no problem with that. And that kind of, and I liked her, and she liked me. But she lived far away. She lived up in Central Florida, a good 6-hour drive. She was living with her grandparents, working at Publix supermarket as a cake decorator. And Taryn was born. Well, I wasn't around near her when that happened, so I wasn't that part of her life. I met Taryn when Taryn was several months old. I was at your mother's grandparents' house, sitting in the kitchen, and the bedroom was visible to me. And Taryn was in the crib sleeping. And then she stood up, and she looked at me, and a great big smile came on her face. She was like several months old, and she was smiling at me, and I smiled at her, and that's how I met her. Soon after that, your mother and I started to live together. She moved in with me in, not Hollywood, Pembroke Pines. And you were born. We had you soon. I remember I said to her, I'll raise your child if you have my child right away. And your mother said, okay. And that was the entire discussion. Soon after that, she was pregnant, and then you were born. And then there were 4 of us. And that lasted, lasted for a while. I don't know how long a while is. We got married before you were born. But the marriage didn't last all that long. I don't know how short it was. I don't remember. I lost my job at Western Union. Didn't lose my job. I got laid off. Reduction in workforce because fax machines started becoming more common, and people started having computers in their homes, which was like unbelievable because computers were always in office buildings, and they took up an entire room. And they had raised floors because all the cabling under them and glass walls and very cold air conditioning to keep them. The idea that these huge machines would eventually wind up in people's homes was just unfathomable. Never even considered it, but then it happened. So people were able to text to each other and send emails to each other. And the Western Union, that's what they did. They sent texts and emails. So it became obsolete. So my marketable skill of being able to repair a teletype machine, which is like a mechanical monster. So I had to go to school to learn another trade, and that's when I became a dental technician. So you had come down to visit me a couple of times in Florida when you were living in Alabama. Yeah, Alabama. And then I drove up there. It was a 15-hour drive. Windshield time. I mean, 15 hours of the driving didn't count pulling over to eat or pulling over to take a nap or anything like that. And then I pick you up and then drive 15 hours back to South Florida, and it was ridiculous, but a lot of work. You asked me one time, you said, are you my real dad? And I said, of course I am, blah, blah, blah. But then I thought, son shouldn't be asking his father that question. So that's when I decided I had to be involved in your life. I couldn't just sit far away from you while you were growing up. So then I went to dental school to get a marketable skill, and I moved to Atlanta. And so they were only 5-hour drive to see you. I go see you on weekends. So every weekend I saw you. So that was a big thing. Just leaving home, leaving my friends and family to be your dad. It wasn't a hard decision to make at all. You were and still are really the most important thing in my life. Being a father was a decision I made, and I knew I was going to have to do the best I possibly could as a father. I knew once, in for a penny, in for a pound, I was going to start this, and I was going to see it all the way through, which is what I did. I did the best I could, and I knew every minute I was doing the best I could, and I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of myself for putting all that effort into it. I'm proud of myself for keeping that promise to myself that I was going to do the best I could. And I'm proud of myself to see how well you turned out. I don't know if I'm responsible for everything that you've become, but I know I didn't screw it up at all. I always had your best interest in mind. That's how a good father is. You'll find out real soon, because you're about to have a daughter. This is your 35th birthday, and your daughter is coming in November. We don't have a name for her yet. So you're about to become a father yourself. So you'll see what I'm talking about, how the dedication is to being a good father is. I'm imagining that's probably how all the Muldoons were. All the Muldoon men were. They probably all good fathers, and they probably all did the best they could. So let's see, that, but we're talking about me. So, so I work for, I guess that brings us kind of up to date, really. The rest of it, you probably remember everything now. Me living in Atlanta, I met Patty. She became my good friend, and she was very instrumental in you being raised too. She was there for you. She was kind of helped me, and I helped her with her kids. We were just helped each other a lot. We were both very, very poor. Oh my God. Uh, $6.50 an hour I was making at Lifelike in Atlanta. But it was worth it. But yeah, poor, and she was pretty poor too because she had 3 kids. And neither one of us are poor now. But anyway, we all got along together real well. And you liked Patty, Patty liked you. And then Tommy pretty much came along really quickly after I had met Patty. So I eventually wound up living in Meridian. I remember hearing from the lab in Meridian saying they wanted to interview me on a Monday morning. So and it was pretty quick, so I contacted your mother and asked her if I could stay with her. Where were you living? Tumasuba. So I can get there Sunday night and then go and interview in the morning. And I got there. You were at church, and the church bus brought you home, and you saw my car parked in the front yard. And you jumped out of that bus and came running to the house because you realized I was there. You weren't expecting me. And I saw the school bus pull up, and I ran out the front door and a big hug and swing around and everything like that. And then I told you I might be living in Meridian. And when I did move to Meridian, I lived closer to your school than you did, than your mother did in Tumasuba. And you were on a football team, which was only like a block and a half from where I was living. Oh my God, this was wonderful for me. It was good times in SSC, so I guess you were in grade school then. I'm trying to bring you up to an age where you clearly remember things so that I don't have to keep going on with this because it's too long. Football team, grade school. You got into a fight on the school bus one time. You beat up the bully that was picking on you all this time. And then you were banned from the bus for the rest of the school season. It was only like 3 weeks. So you lived with me. So because the bus wouldn't pick you up in Tumasuba, and I live close. So I would drop you off, and then I'd go pick you up at the end of the day. I had to leave work early, so I'd go leave work, take my lunch at 3, like in 3 in the afternoon, pick you up, take you home, go back and finish a few hours at work, and then get home at night. So it was pretty good. You remember when you got in the car, I said, your mother told me what happened, talking about the incident on the school bus. And you got real serious. You said, yeah. And I said, you're not in any trouble with me. And I was proud of you. You know, for getting into a fight in school and getting banned from the school bus. That's the opposite reaction people usually get. And I was proud of you. I've been proud of you a lot of times, things that you did in life. Really proud of you. Not just, I was impressed. I was proud of you for wearing a seatbelt when you were in the car accident. I was proud of you learning how to play chess. I was proud of you learning how to juggle. Lots of things made me proud. So this is getting melancholy now, and I'm running out of things to say. So, you have any questions? Ask me. I'm guessing most of this is supposed to be. I'm looking at myself here to make sure I'm in the frame. I guess most of this is stuff you're gonna look at after I'm gone. Maybe share this with your grandchildren or something like that. I don't know. I don't know why you want this. You never said why. I'm just assuming certain things there. Maybe you just wanted names and dates and stuff like that. So this might be the end of it. I think I might be finished now. Anyway, I'm going to finish talking now, and then I'm going to try to edit everything together. I think I have a few takes to put together, and then try to add some photos of things that when I was talking about. I might mention Grand Avenue. I'll try to have a photo of Grand Avenue. Well, I guess if I did that, you've already seen it. Okay, so anything you see, that's what I'm going to do now when I hang up. This has been fun, pal. I love you. And happy birthday, by the way. Yes, today's your birthday. I didn't wait to do this on your birthday. I've been doing this for a while, but it keeps getting too long, and I keep going back and try to do it over again and over again and over again to try to shorten it. And now I've run out of time, so now I'm just going to have to accept what I have and put it together and make it watchable for you. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop looking at myself and I'll look at you and tell you I love you very much. I've always loved you very, very much. And I've always been proud of you, and I'm proud of you now. 35 years old, about to be a father. You live in a nice house, you drive a new car, you're doing well. And I love you, wife. You really did well there too. Bye.